Keep it positive. No negativity, no ugliness. No drama in 2021. That is our slogan here on the Brad and Britt cast, right? That's what we've always been about, right?
Yeah. You know what I did today? I cooked up some ribs and I cooked up some chicken just in case we run out of electricity for a day or so. So we do have some food.
Ribs and chicken, huh?
It was ribs and chicken.
You felt like that was...
Don't go racial on me. Don't go racial on me.
Well, I just thought, perhaps you could grab some potted meat or something. I didn't really think that ribs and chicken would be the way to go, but there you go, breaking down the barriers. Don't go getting racial on me.
Don't do race shit on me. You felt like that. Don't go racial on me. Don't go racial.
Although I tell you this, when I lived in Winston-Salem, they had a really good rib place. It was up from where we lived. I didn't go there that often, but goddamn, they had some good ribs. Got to be honest with you.
Whatever happened to that race car driver, Willie T. Ribbs?
They had a documentary about him last year. It was on one of the 30 for 30s, or maybe there was an actual theatrical release, and it was very interesting. As usual, there's a lot more to the story. And as usual, the NASCAR crowd is like the most racist pieces of shit on the planet. So,
that's so not true. You never learned the lesson of Rush, did you?
Clearly, I did not. It was bizarre. Everything was bizarre. You got to watch out for that ice storm, though, everybody. Everybody be careful now. It could be an ugly, ugly situation. I'm making chicken fingers and tater tots. It's date night tonight here at Casa de Whitmire. So.
Not there.
Oh, you son of a bitch.
Right again.
You son of a bitch. No, that was.
You know, I have these two little charging brick things.
Mm-hmm.
They're like $15 each. Had them for a couple years. Then I got them out this morning, and sure enough, they were on zero because I didn't realize if you just let them sit for a long time, you don't use them, they just kind of
go away.
So I charged those fuckers. It takes like 7 hours. These are like slow, but I got it. I got it done. So if we're down to that, that slowness is almost as slow as this computer today.
But not quite.
But not quite. It's just it is just not doing nothing. Right now, I've got the blank screen of death. That's how bad this is. Come on. No, you know what? It never went over to mine. I got to go back to yours.
Go back to mine, Dan, before I have to kill you. So yes, round 1 of the vaccine is in my arm and in my body. And I didn't experience much of anything on the first one. You know, it's funny. I'm going to bring my card with my proof of vaccination. I'm going to show it in front of everybody and just like, here, look at me, you know, like that. Because that's awesome.
Of course you are. Of course you are.
I got vaccinated and you're going to die. Blah, blah, blah. I got mine at the Greensboro Coliseum, though. I got to see. The second one is the one they say where you get a little blowback or whatever. Maybe body aches and shit like that.
Thanks. I don't watch TV or read anything or know anything about that, Britt. Thanks.
I thought you would have forgotten about it.
I didn't know anything about that.
I thought you would have forgotten about that.
Do you have any other medical?
I do have some medical advice. If you get
Gupta,
I might send a doctor over to help you unfuck yourself after you go fuck yourself. Dr. Vin Gupta. What does it mean?
try this one more time. It's really just now I've just got a link but no picture rolling live there. I don't like that. It is just not doing what I
didn't want to cooperate today.
That can't be right either. You know what? I just give up here. I'm getting close to giving up. It's just really annoying. I mean, just extremely pointlessly annoying for no reason. I don't want to share it to the Brad and Britt page. It's already on the Brad and Britt page. I want it on the Brad page. It won't let me do the Brad page today for some reason. It just doesn't like it. So you know what? Fuck it. Let's just do it.
Fuck it. We're moving on.
The link, and click on the link, and it'll be good enough. Okay. Too much time wasted there. All right.
Hang on.
Welcome to the Brad and Britt cast. We're glad to have you with us here. We're live in the 5 o'clock hour on Wednesday, and we'll just talk about Rush Limbaugh today, since that's the only thing that matters.
It is it's the most important thing, isn't it?
It is the most important thing, and let me just say this, and this is a heartfelt question, and it's on behalf of the American people. I sure hope. And I'm just asking if anybody knows the answer. I hope that a coronavirus vaccine was not wasted on this guy.
So you're going to take the high road on this one.
I'm taken the high road because that would have taken it away from one person.
That's funny. Well, my immediate thought was,
remember, you gave me the idea. You don't realize. Remember when I said to you 5 minutes ago, I said, "Boy, you really gave me an idea."
I took my first dose of the vaccine today. Brad and I were talking about it, and that's what he took away from it. Several people contacted me as I was in line to get the vaccine, and they felt the need, because I mean, there are people that are watching and listening to us. They don't know this. I used to, on a regular basis, do the character a little Rush, and it sounded, and I would do what was a pretty good imitation of Rush Hudson Limbaugh III, and it became somewhat
pretty good. It was the best. It was.
Oh, thank you.
It was voted best Rush Limbaugh imitation in a major market. When we were in Charlotte, that's a major market. Okay,
you have to understand that we went on the air in Charlotte in 2012. They already hated us from the beginning because there have been all these rumors that the DNC was an influence, because they were having the DNC in Charlotte and they had hired us. So the very first thing we did on day one is we came out of the thing and we started playing "My City Was Gone," the Rush Limbaugh thing. I started doing the character and people were like, "What the fuck is this?" Because the Rush Limbaugh show is over at 3. Why is this on? I don't understand. And then we completely mocked him, which, kind of set the tone for how things would go for us for the next 2 years at WBT in Charlotte. But again, I regret nothing.
And you know what? By the way, I feel better about that more today than yesterday, but not half as much as tomorrow.
I don't regret any of it. I mean, what are you going to do? It's what we did, and it's what we were, and I don't have a problem with it. And I don't, I feel badly for Mr. Limbaugh's family, but my immediate thought was, at least from this point on, he won't be able to inspire anybody else to do shit like what happened on January the 6th. Of course, unfortunately, the recordings of him will live on forever. So if people want to be influenced to, take arms against the Capitol and try to murder senators in service of Donald Trump or MAGA or whatever it is that they think they're in service of, they'll be able to listen to the recordings, ad infinitum. But that was my immediate thought.
I don't know how much reading you did today.
No.
But I read enough things that, of course, jogged my mind, and everything I was reading, I did remember as it was being rolled out in front of me of things that he did over the years that were just unforgivable, inexcusable. Like someone else, I can't think of his name, he did things that normally would end someone's career, get them really screwed up, but that person seems to get away with those. I can't remember. Oh, it's the president of the United States. And,
you have to
wait, hang on. And David Folkenflik of NPR wrote a piece, and I believe that was the one that really paralleled the timeline of these two people beginning in 1987, which happens to be the year that The Art of the Deal came out. It's also the year that that Limbaugh's coming on strong out of Sacramento. He moves to New York. He's got a local show there, and then he hits the national show. But the zeitgeist of these two guys paralleled each other, but it really didn't meet. It really didn't meet until the campaign of 2016. And Limbaugh was not a Trump guy at that point when there were a bunch of other candidates. I think he was a Ted Cruz supporter. But the minute Trump got the nomination, he was all in. They started playing golf. Next thing you know, as always, from the transactional standpoint, these may be the two most transactional people in the history of the world, right? What can you do for me? How does it make me look good? And they saw that that love affair was going to be mutually beneficial to them, and off they went all these years, all 4 years that he's in office, and I'd forgot, or all these little things. Do you remember the famous virtual Trump rally that was done a few weeks before the election?
No.
When Trump couldn't do the rallies because he actually was right at the moment he'd gotten the coronavirus.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So Rush stepped in for him, and they did a 3-hour show, which he did every day, and it featured Trump, and it was a 3-hour virtual rally. And I guess from a numerical standpoint, clearly the reach that day was way greater than he would have ever had at one of the live rallies with 10 or 15,000 people. And by the way, not that much live television coverage those last few months. He didn't get what he wanted there.
They and again, they kept on Fox News. It's as though Jesus has died. It is as though Jesus has been.
The website is just.
It's just they pulled Dan fucking Quayle out of some cave somewhere. I haven't seen Dan, and I haven't wanted to see Dan Quayle ever. But nobody knows where Dan Quayle is. I think he was underneath the bunker that Cheney used to be in. But they found him and they brought him out. And they talked about how great Rush Hudson Limbaugh III. The quote that they kept showing on the stream was VP Pence. Rush Limbaugh made conservatism fun. Did he? Did he really?
Well, I heard Pence when he called in. And of course, my first thought was, hey, could you give us the location of where Mike Pence is? You remember the famous, where's Hunter Biden? Well, where is Mike Pence? And why has he not spoken once publicly, since his life was threatened courtesy of Donald J. Trump until now? This is the first time he's spoken.
Well, it's also
remember, in the safety and security of being on Fox, they were never going to ask him about anything except to sit there and suck up to the memory of Rush Limbaugh. So
no, but it was the first time that Trump has spoken publicly since he decided to leave Washington and get everybody killed. This is the first public statement he's made, and he called into Fox and talked about what a wonderful, great gentleman Rush Limbaugh was and how he was on board from minute one, all this other shit. You have to understand. I think we knew it would happen, but I still get riled up about it. I mean, I knew there was going to be this adulation and adoration and everything else, but you have to be able to draw a very straight line between exactly what you were saying, his rise to power at KFBK in Sacramento, the national rollout show, the stupid book, the way things ought to be, et cetera, and what happened on January the 6th.
Remember, the book brilliantly reviewed by yours truly.
It was one of the great reviews, which you absolutely need to post. You have to post it on social media. Do it again. You got to do it again today.
I did. I put it up today.
Did you? Oh.
If you go to my Facebook page,
it's one of my favorite reviews.
It is there. I was actually able to find it.
Your review of that stupid ass book and Roger Ebert's review of I Spit on Your Grave are and the Guy Fieri Times Square restaurant. Those are like three of my favorite reviews in the history of reviews. But you have to draw a straight line between stupid Rush Limbaugh's rise to power, what he did on talk radio, and what happened on January the 6th, right? I mean, that's an easy one, right? That's a simple connection, isn't it?
It's very easy. There are some other interesting parallels that clearly both of them recognized. And one of them is that it doesn't matter how much money you have, how much money you're making, or how much money you can get people to perceive you have or are making in the case of Trump, because we're still not sure that he's really loaded. We're really not.
He's loaded with shit. I don't think he's loaded with money.
Okay, but for the sake of the argument, going back well before he ever appeared even on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, he was perceived as one of the richest guys in New York and the rest of it. But they were somehow able to sell themselves, Limbaugh, as just average guys. And I don't think there may be anybody who lives larger in Palm Beach than Rush Limbaugh. Nobody lives larger. Nobody did.
No, it was a big deal.
Somehow, and I want to contrast that with a guy who I know is loaded, Warren Buffett.
Yeah,
Warren Buffett. And when Warren Buffett dies, it is not going to say, "Oh, he hid all his money, but he had castles on 9 continents and had people." It's not going to be that way. He didn't have to prove it.
There it is.
The parallels between the two are just striking. They really, really are. Let's divide this up into a couple different segments. And one of them is about Rush Limbaugh's effect on radio itself.
Right.
because there are a lot of myths that go around, and because he said and repeated things
Right.
so often, they took on the aura of being the truth when they weren't truthful. It was kind of Rush being the originator of fake news in his own way. The big lie, the big and here's one, and I think this translates to today. And I was just thinking about this. I didn't read this anywhere, but remember, and you can come up with 10 of these annoying repetitive phrases that he used to use all the time. You use them during the Little Rush imitation character, and one of them was America's Anchorman. Remember that?
Oh, Jesus.
Right.
Yes.
Now, I just want you to think about what that means, America's
Yeah.
Anchorman, because clearly that is imparting to people who love him and listen to him that they are getting the truth. They are getting the news, and bring that through today. Bring that through what Fox News did, largely built on the same model of Rush Limbaugh, but just put it on TV and hire some blondes with big tits and pump it up a little bit more. You have Rush Limbaugh on TV. That's called Fox News.
Yeah.
But take that and move ahead and think of the big lie of America's Anchorman, because there are people, a lot of them, who get their news, and I won't even at this point confine it to Rush Limbaugh, but they think they're getting the news from Rush Limbaugh. They think they get their news from their news feed on Facebook. They think that if they see something on Twitter, it is the news. And the word Anchorman has, until Walter Cronkite passed and until it became obvious that there were going to be more than 3 television news shows every night at 6:30, it had some degree of responsibility to it. But he took that word and he ruined it. He destroyed it. But the people who loved him did not know that. They thought, and they still think to this day, that Rush, is giving them the news, right? And people think that Sean Hannity is an anchorman. They think that.
Well,
and by the way, it's not confined just to him, because I hear Rachel Maddow saying, when I'm anchoring the news here at 9:00, blah, blah, blah. She uses it that way.
Yeah, she
it's
shouldn't do
very
that.
lazy. It's inexcusable, and she shouldn't do it. She's not a news person.
There's two things going on there. First of all, the reason that some people think that Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh are the news is because some of those stations they were on were called News 540, W whatever, or they would call those stations news, and then the people kind of would that's part of the problem. But the other thing the other thing that's going on there is that Rush Limbaugh wanted to differentiate himself from like Peter Jennings and Dan Rather and those people that were anchors, at least when the show was something. But he always said, I don't want to be them. But the fact that he wanted to take that, he wanted to have the cachet that they had so badly. He wanted to be them, but he didn't want to be them. And he swore he didn't want to be them, but he did want to be them so badly. And that was part of it. And then you got into the drive-by shit that he did and all the other bullshit that the point of the Rush Limbaugh show, and this was very important. I thought somebody pointed this out a few years ago to me. The point of that show, or what eventually evolved out of it, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, all that stuff, is that you want the listeners, particularly when they call back into you, to be able to parrot back exactly what you're saying. So you have to repeat yourself a lot in order for that to happen. You've done those things with advertising. Somebody has to hear something 17 or 20 times before it's finally imprinted into their brain or whatever. That was the point of that show. And unfortunately, there were so many ripoffs across America of that guy, and so many guys in Little Rock, Arkansas, and Peoria, and all over the place who seized the mantle and started doing the shit that he did, and then it just turned into an absolute cancer. Oops, sorry. I guess that's irony, or is that coincidence? But that's essentially what it was. And part of the mythology that you were talking about was that the man saved AM radio. Remember that? That was another one of the guys saved AM radio. Well. Mm-hmm. You and I can talk about how we tried to kill AM radio about 10 or 12 years ago too. It's not
that he tried to kill it. It's just, and unfortunately, again, so many of the things that we were saying 10 and 15 years ago about talk radio, because we were right in the middle of it. I used to say, well, talk radio has become like the Republican Party and NASCAR. It's too old and it's too white, and eventually it's going to die off. Well, here we are all these years later, and it didn't die off.
Right.
We have millions of people who keep feeding into this somehow. And I guess what maybe saved right-wing talk radio may be the internet. It may be all the surrounding and supporting media that help the feedback loop keep it going, right? I think
there's part of that. Yeah.
I think so. And by the way, Limbaugh's actual influence in the last few years was on the downswing. It was, no question about it, diminishing, just because radio in general, and probably in the last year, because of the coronavirus and fewer people driving around every day in cars listening to him, I'm sure that faded. And I guess the ultimate measure here is he couldn't get Donald Trump reelected. He couldn't do it this time.
Well, that has to be, I mean, that has to be said. I mean, he was, and it wasn't, you know, he was so blind. You talk about some blind hatred. Jesus Christ, the blind hatred that he had toward the Clintons in particular. Bill Clinton helped out Rush Limbaugh's show more than I could think anybody else possible. Don't you believe that to be true? Bill Clinton was such a boost to that show, and the hatred that Rush would have for him.
Remember how you're saying that. He really wasn't helping. I mean, just because he existed, Bill Clinton.
Exactly.
Really, right.
As far as Rush making him into some sort of nemesis, they weren't obviously on the same level. But the stuff that he did with Bill Clinton and all of the bullshit that they pulled during that period of time in the 90s. I mean, that's when that show really exploded.
Well, hey, conspiracy theories didn't just start to occur when Donald Trump was running for president. Conspiracy theories didn't just start to occur when Donald Trump questioned Barack Obama's birthplace. By the way, a conspiracy theory that Rush Limbaugh was more than happy to run with, right alongside with him. He was right there with him the whole time. But you can go back to the Clinton years with Rush Limbaugh and Vince Foster and the Oklahoma City bombing. Remember the famous Oklahoma City bombing comment? Bill Clinton, again, who was a president who would be, I think, probably in the top 3 or 4 of presidents who, when there was a tragedy, would always know the right words to say and the right way to say them. And he went to Oklahoma City and made a speech, and I think afterwards, or maybe even during that speech, mentioned that there are voices in this country that are driving people to do things that are really, really bad. I mean, he didn't mention Limbaugh by name, but Rush, of course, just like Trump years later, when you would allude to him, he would pick up on it and try to shove it right back down your throat. And he was, oh my God, how dare you talk about me that way? It wasn't talk radio that placed that bomb in front of the Alfred Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma. It was not us at all. You're the hate. I'm not the hate. I'm the love. And so it's nothing new. And it didn't start with Rush Limbaugh. He just perfected it for an 80s and 90s and 2000s audience via the medium that he grew up on, radio. I mean, one thing we must say, that he had extreme, almost freakish radio skills as a talker. There are very few people that can talk hour upon hour almost without stopping and making it sound like he knows what he's talking about and being funny. I mean, you can't take that away from him at all. And, you know, he was born as a radio person in the crucible of getting fucked over and being told he sucked by program directors all over the country. And he used that in his whole career. It was always about getting back at those.
It happened to all of us. That happened to all of us.
But wait a minute. Who else in the public sphere right now makes it his life's mission to get back at anybody who says a mean thing about him? Could
Donald John Trump Sr.
Right.
John Trump.
And you mentioned it yesterday. It became the big story of the last day on CNN and MSNBC, I'm sure, about him attacking Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is Donald Trump's program director in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
He just told him that he was wrong. He was guilty. Stop doing that.
Even like Howard Stern, who I did cry and despise, and who had the same birthday as Rush Limbaugh, even he has taken kind of an apology tour over the past little bit to kind of talk about the people that he fucked over the years, right? At least he's tried to make some restitution, which I think is kind of wormy to do in private as you screwed over these people in public.
It's not so much that with Howard Stern. Once you hit 67 years old,
right,
you probably shouldn't be behaving exactly the same way that you were when you were 33 and you were trying to take over the world, and before you had two nickels to rub together. Most people kind of find that in their life. And,
right. You don't need to be such a dick. But it almost seems to me like the Howard Stern story is that I just had to be a dick in order to make this much money and be this famous. And I'm sorry I had to do it, but I had to do it. That really seems to be the Howard Stern story. Right. I listened to the Rush Limbaugh station here on the way back after I'd finished getting my shot, and it was it's just reruns.
This is early in the afternoon.
This is like maybe 1 o'clock, 1:30, and they're doing their news break, and Fox News Radio, Rush Limbaugh has died, and God help us all, God is dead and the war has begun, and they're just doing their reruns, and you got Rush doing the live spot. It's LifeLock, folks, and it's like. And like there was no, we didn't think that the guy, the guy in and out of the stop sets of the commercials, they would say, well, it's the Limbaugh legacy. That's what they're calling it, the Limbaugh legacy. Now the Limbaugh fucking legacy is just play the recordings and the video from January the 6th. That's the Limbaugh legacy. That is what you see in America, the divisiveness that we have now, the insurrectionists going up there trying to murder people on Capitol Hill. That's the Limbaugh legacy. Fuck this tying it with a bow and putting some potpourri on it. It's a steaming turd, and it needs to be said. I don't want to shit on the guy or whatever. I feel badly for his family, and I've seen these stories about how he would do nice stuff for people, and he'd go to restaurants in Palm Beach, and he'd leave $500 tips and shit like that. I'm sure there were some things. I'll tell you what convinced me that he wasn't a good person. I'm going to tell you, I've told you this story. We were listening to the show one time when he told the story. He's in Cape Girardeau visiting his parents back when his mother, his parents were still alive, shit. And he's going around town, and his mom goes, he's getting ready to take off, go to the airport, fly the private plane back to, down to Florida. And his mom goes, well, I'll see you at the airport. And he goes, what do you mean see you at the airport? So he goes to the airport. His mom meets him there with some of her friends, because she's so proud of her son and what she does. She wants these people that she knows in town to meet her son, to kind of dote on him, right? To brag on him a little bit. He said out of his own mouth, he didn't talk to her for 3 months because he was so embarrassed. I swear to God, there's nothing my mother that could do. My mother could probably stab me with a fork in my thigh, and I'd talk to her. Jesus Christ, your mother's not going to be on earth that much. How do you not talk to her for 3 months because she was so proud of you and she embarrassed you for half a second? And he was always that wormy little 14-year-old zit-faced boy. He was always that guy his entire life, all the way up until he was 70 years old, and he could never get over being that outcast, nerdy, 14-year-old zitty kid listening to the radio, right? He never stopped being that guy. And when he could, he would seek retribution on everybody and anybody he could in the ugliest way possible on the airwaves.
All right. Here's a sidetrack. We have 3 famous, nationally known radio people with a little TV mixed in on each. All right. So the Casey Kasem estate got fought over, right, by his kids and
absolutely,
his wife, right? They fought over that. It looks to me, if I'm reading correctly, that Larry King, he had it together completely.
It was like a piece of paper, right?
No. Listen, from what I read, he was worth about 150 million. Wait, he was worth about 150 million, and about 148 million of that is in trusts. The money is tied up in trusts that nobody can screw with, and it's not in his estate. And so there's only about 2 million in his estate, and apparently that wife of his is fighting whoever the children that are still left over a measly, and I say that because it's true, instead of 150 million, it's only 2 million. He's fighting the kids over the estate. So Larry was pretty, I think, pretty smart, had good advice. Now we're to Limbaugh. So he's got one live wife, he's got a couple of ex-wives, but no children. He's got no children.
Zero kids.
Therefore, and he may be richer than everybody put together. I think it's possible. He may be worth $1 billion, because we kept seeing every 3 or 4 years, he would keep signing a new contract, and it would always be 50 million a year, 60 million. And we go, okay, all right. Well, you know what? After a while, 50 or 60 million adds up to a lot of money, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So if he left this earth with that much money and no one except his wife to will it to, because that he wouldn't be dumb enough, no one would be dumb enough to have everybody's name on everything so that everything just passes to the wife. He's not that dumb. So it'll be interesting to see who gets the money. Who does he use his money to keep making right-wing conservative statements to over the years? Good. For instance, I'll compare.
I don't know.
If you listen to NPR at all, you know that Joan Kroc of the McDonald's she willed, I think, $250 million to NPR, and you hear they still talk about
all the
it.
time.
You know why?
All the time.
Because that's a lot of money. And
Ray Kroc, who was generally a son of a bitch his entire life, she's decided to go ahead and try to help out a little bit with his legacy.
Yeah. Now,
Ray.
Right. So here's what I'm going to do here. I want to keep redrawing that line to the past and then turn it back around to going forward, because I think you go back to the 1930s hate radio preacher, Father Coughlin. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you don't know who Father Coughlin is, look it up.
Google that. Yeah.
He was trashing FDR,
right,
almost in the same way that you heard Rush Limbaugh talk about Ted Kennedy or Bill Clinton or Barack Obama. That was in the 1930s. Then you get to Joe McCarthy in the early 1950s, Republican all the way, right? And then you get to Ronald Reagan, who, and think about this, they dumped the fairness doctrine, I think, fairly early in Reagan's term in the early 80s. And that allowed talk radio to decide, well, fuck it. Let's find the biggest crazy moron. Let's just let her rip. And so at KFBK, who do they hire? Morton Downey Jr.
Yeah.
Morton Downey Jr. is the guy on KFBK in Sacramento. He gets hot and he becomes a national TV star. Again, we may be speaking names you don't know of. I apologize for that, but one day you'll be old and you'll talk about shit like this too, Tom. But Morton Downey goes on, right? The opening occurs and Limbaugh is on KFBK in Sacramento, and the rest is history. And that history includes that crossing ideological and almost brotherly paths with Newt Gingrich. Newt Gingrich, who is tormenting the Clintons and is rising up in the Republican Party. I mean, he on the
back of Hillary and Bill Clinton. Absolutely.
Right. He started out as a backbencher, and he quickly discovered that it wasn't about, and by the way, you can draw a line from Newt Gingrich to Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Easily.
Do you think she gives a shit about not being on committees, congressional
No.
committees. You
No.
don't get famous being on
No.
congressional committees. You know how you get famous as a backbench congresswoman? You open your mouth. You get on TV. You do outrageous things. Now, the argument, look at AOC. Look at her. Well, okay. Except AOC is not plotting to take over the United States government or saying things equivalent to that. But Newt Gingrich and Rush Limbaugh, next thing you know, right? Limbaugh, who has already stayed in the White House, right? Stayed overnight there when George W. Bush becomes.
It's way more than that.
Together.
There's way more than that. He becomes an honorary member of that Republican Revolution class in 1995 when Newt Gingrich becomes Speaker. Right. They make him an honorary member of that class, and they invite him up for to talk to all the congressmen and stuff. And he gets to hang out, and for 5 seconds, he doesn't get to be that zit-faced 14-year-old who can't touch a boob in Cape Girardeau. All that shit happened.
Right. So Limbaugh just carves this fat path through talk radio from noon to 3 every day, and you experienced it. I certainly experienced it. The next thing you know, there are imitators everywhere. There are local versions of Limbaugh everywhere across the country, and little Sean Hannity is making his way up through Atlanta to New York also.
And I'll never forgive Rush for inspiring that piece of shit.
Right.
I'll never forgive that.
Right. So I think an argument can be made that Limbaugh is as responsible, or maybe more so, than anybody for us having to experience Trumpism the past 4 years, because it was just all foundation. And then Trump just saw the opening and went with it. And the next thing you know, the path is clear. He's the nominee and he becomes the president. And I don't think that happens without Limbaugh, because without Limbaugh, there may have never been a Fox News, because Roger Ailes produced Rush Limbaugh's 4-year-long TV show, which they go out of their way to keep in every obituary. Oh, his failed 4 years on TV, but he was better on radio. No, you know what? 4 years on TV is not a failed show. Okay.
Yeah, but you remember.
But wait a minute.
Yeah.
But the fact is, he worked with Ailes. Yes. The cross-pollination of ideas and hate, it mattered. I'm not saying he didn't. No. He didn't dislodge Johnny Carson. I'm not saying that.
But you remember the reason that he gave for not doing the show anymore. He said that he just didn't have time for it. That was what Rush Limbaugh told his audience for many, many years, which is a fucking lie. That would be a lie.
But remember, getting ratings on TV is a different animal than getting them on the radio. So he
absolutely it is.
He couldn't do, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He was there, and that's just part of the whole long.
Donald Trump was a physical manifestation and a vessel for a lot of the stuff that Rush had preached for 20 plus years on the radio. And they just needed that Trojan horse to sail right into the White House. That's exactly what happened. And then as a result of all of that, you saw people trying to kill people on January the 6th. I mean, that ultimately that is the legacy of Donald John Trump Sr. They can do everything they want to. They can say, he started this MAGA movement and all this other stuff. What history is going to remember Donald John Trump Sr. for is January the 6th. And I think you're right. None of that is possible without Rush Limbaugh and the mountain of shit that started when all that happened. Now, it may have started with Father Coughlin. You go through all of those machinations and everything else. But yeah, there was a physical, they needed, because Rush Limbaugh can't run for president. As much as his listeners would have wished and thought and begged for it over the years, he can't. So they need something that is palatable enough to the American people. And by God, who knew that Donald Trump would be that guy? But he was that guy who was palatable enough to the Electoral College anyway to make it into the White House and then fuck up the entire country.
I can't afford the pay cut.
People want to do.
I am dead, folks. I remain dead. Now, I still expect my check to be written by Bob Pittman of iHeartRadio. You're going to have to write that check again, Bob, because you've done it for a long, long time, and it's great to be here in hell, folks. I am going to do it for hell what I did to Cape Girardeau, which was hell on earth.
All right, I didn't want to read anything, but I want to be precise because we referred to this a few minutes ago about what Limbaugh said after the Oklahoma City bombing in response to Bill Clinton, who said that it was loud and angry voices inflaming the national dialogue. So Rush takes it personally.
That's me.
And protest. And here is the quote that Rush spoke after the Oklahoma City bombing. See if it sounds familiar. Spoiler alert, it was same things were said after January 6th, but this is Limbaugh back then.
Same shit.
Liberals are trying to portray the mainstream conservative agenda in this country as extremist, and now that same word is being attached to the nuts and lunatics who blew up this building, in Oklahoma City. The left in this country would love for the right to be permanently disqualified and silenced by the virtue of their innuendo. Sound from it? You could paste that right over.
Absolutely, you could.
The excuses and the collaboration going on to try to paper over and make us forget what happened barely a month ago. Because it's all about them. It's making them all look bad. All Republicans wanted to blow up the Capitol a few weekends ago. No, we're not saying that, except you don't just have a little cut on your finger. You do have a cancer within whatever you want to call that thing called Republicans. I don't even call it a political party. It's either a terrorist organization, a cult. I mean, it's not that right now.
Yeah,
right? It's the walking wounded.
They're dying.
It's at war with itself. And look at the timeline here. Limbaugh's now dead. He's gone.
Mm-hmm.
He's not there to stoke whatever influence he still had.
Yeah.
And when we're looking back on this a few years from now, it's going to be pretty interesting to note that he is gone from the scene, because there really is no one that takes his place. And as Mike Pence, calling from some undisclosed location today to Fox, they have him on, and they've got the little thing at the bottom of the screen, with the cell phone that turns
it keeps
down,
rotating. Yes,
rotating. So Mike Pence on the telephone. Okay? Wait, and Pence wanted you to know today that he did talk radio for 10 years. And a lot of these people talk about how I first heard him, it inspired me to do this, and Pence is going there. And then he said the most important thing of all: there'll never be another one like him. And I completed the sentence by saying, thank God there will never be another one like him. Now, another person who was inspired originally by Rush Limbaugh is Joe Walsh, not the Eagles' Joe Walsh, but the former Congressman Joe Walsh
from Illinois,
who quickly after the election in 2016 became a never Trumper. And as odious as he was, he has been fairly eloquent and fairly consistent all these years. And here's the quote from him. He leaves behind a conservative movement shaped by his voice in politics. He also leaves behind a conservative movement no longer interested in truth. He helped make our nation more divided and polarized than it has been in years. This is Rush Limbaugh's legacy. I don't think it's possible for me to agree with that statement anymore. We are not better off for having Rush Limbaugh in our lives. We are not better off for having Donald Trump in our lives. These are people that we would have done much better, I believe, without. What say you, Mr. Whitmire?
I say that I am still dead down here. I'm handling what they have me down here, folks, in hell.
Let me ask you, Little Rush.
Yes, I'm in hell.
First of all, who have you got ready to perform eulogies at your funeral? Because I was hoping that you'd already booked Trump ahead of time, because then he could turn that into a rally and make it all about him. Would that bother you if he made your funeral
Absolutely
all about
not.
him?
I would be thrilled. It's going to be him, Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, Ivanka, who is a babe. I know so because her dad wants to bang her. I'm going to get John Voight. It's going to be a star-studded cast. Ted Nugent. These are just some of the people that are going to represent me, and it's going to be fantastic, folks. Don't worry about me in hell, though. I am shoveling the shit from a lot of elephants from the Barnum Bailey circus, folks. I hated animals, too.
Hey, while we have you today, Little Rush.
From hell, it's Little Rush. Go ahead.
Right. Is your hearing okay down there? Can you hear?
It's fantastic down here, folks. It's wonderful. I was hearing myself getting sodomized by Stalin earlier, and everything worked out really, really well. It's just, my hearing has been restored thanks to the underlord of Satan, who now, of course, has brought me home. Okay. Talent on loan from Satan.
Well, what do you think? And I want to be as current as I can be with you here. What do you think of the Donald Trump attack on Mitch McConnell? Whose side are you on there? Are you a conservative with Mitch McConnell, or are you still a full-fledged Trumper from hell?
Look, I am and in hell, as it turns out. I am looking forward to both Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump being down here with me in hell, but I support Donald Trump 150,000%. There's no question about it. This is the man for the times, the man that I love, and the man that I want to caress. The moment that he is escorted right in here through the gates of hell, I want to hug him and kiss him for at least 30 minutes straight, folks. It's going to be wonderful.
I was mentioning before, in joking, that now there may be a very, very desirable property on the ocean there in Palm Beach.
Yes.
I don't know how much your house is worth. I wish I could Zillow it right now and get the word. But are you gonna allow Catherine to keep living in the home, or are you gonna kick her to the curb now that you don't need her anymore?
I expect Catherine to be banging a cabana boy by about 9:00 tonight, and she will be allowed to stay in that house. I gave some money to some nieces and some nephews, and a couple. The rest of it, I'm just gonna. Most of it's gonna go to Catherine, who is, by the way, 44 years old, I believe. 44 years old, and she's going to be loaded. So if you guys want to head on down there and bang my wife, the thing about hell is I am forced to watch her have sex for all of eternity down here. So anybody who wants to do some freaky shit, there's nothing I can do about it, but I got to watch. That's what's going to happen to me down here in hell, folks.
Can I ask, this is probably the question that you've never been asked ever in an interview.
Yes.
Why didn't you have any children, any little Rushes, true little Rushes, to pass that wonderful legacy on to? Look at Donald Trump. He has all these children and grandchildren. They're going to be Trumps forever, but the Limbaugh line ends with you. Now, I know you have a stupid loser brother who sucked off your name for years.
Yes.
David, I guess is his name. Yeah.
I did not need any little crumb snatchers around there crippling my style. When I want to go golfing at 3:00 in the afternoon on a whim, I just want to go. I don't want to have to worry about somebody needs to be breastfed. Somebody needs to go to a play date. I didn't want any of that shit.
Even on your deathbed, you didn't regret.
No. And plus, here's the other thing about that, folks. If I had a son or a daughter or a lot of children, that means I've got to hire more staff. That even means more minorities on my property in Palm Beach. By God, I had enough of them out there trimming the bushes. I didn't want more minorities in my house, possibly stealing things. Are you kidding me? No way. I didn't want to. By the way, it's Rush Hudson Limbaugh III, live in hell. Delighted you have joined us. One hand, half my brain tied behind my back here in hell, and fantastic. It is approximately 45,000 degrees. It is a wonderful day in hell. I'll be spending all eternity here. Glad you've joined me.
It's fun taking the high road sometimes, isn't it?
I think that we absolutely now have to bring bring him back for real.
check on him from hell from time to time.
No, not from time to time, very frequently.
Infrequently.
I think it's better. I think it's funnier now. We let it go when he was dying. Okay, we let it go.
Yeah.
But now that he's gone,
Yeah.
Who did Steve Dahl do from the dead? Didn't Dahl do that?
He did a bunch of them. He did George Hallis.
George Hallis, yes, of the Bears.
He was doing George Hallis all the time. They played the fucking Bears fight song, and that would roust him from the dead. And it was just... goodbye, everybody.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Lord.